How many times in gaming history have we seen a release or preview trailer that got our hopes up only to finally play it on release and go, wait a minute, this is nothing like they said. Here are some of the top games that lied to us. They say one of the best business tactics is to underpromise and overdeliver. Well, Anthem went a slightly different route and decided to overpromise and embarrassingly underdeliver. And deciding to truly develop a game after you have already made the demo and release it to the public is a fast-track path to overpromise and underdeliver. Long story short, the Anthem demo that was seen at E3 was made to impress executives of the company. And they loved it, because who wouldn't love what they showed in the demo? That's exactly why people got incredibly excited about the game. They even doubled down on the lies and put everything you are about to see was captured in-game and in real time, which is just laughable. And with the hype so high for the game after the teaser, it was time to actually make the game. And they couldn't. Which is why the full game looks so different from that trailer and why it is missing so much, like seamless transitions, dynamic environments, giant creatures. The graphical fidelity and scale of the world you play in is just all entirely different. The Last of Us 2, a game with so much emotion and so many differing opinions surrounding it. A game that had players laughing, crying, screaming, and some gamers outraged. And one understandable reason for the outrage were the lies and deception surrounding Joel, one of the franchise's most beloved characters. In the release date trailer, we see a close-up of Ellie, when all of a sudden a hand covers her mouth and she turns around slowly to see none other than Joel, who says to Ellie, "You think I'd let you do this on your own?" Which at the time, one would think that would mean that Joel would play a major role later into the game, playing into the feelings and emotions of a large number of people that enjoyed the first game, with the dynamic of Joel and Ellie conquering whatever obstacles were in front of them together. Whereas in the actual game, it is Jesse that does the exact same thing in that scene because, well, I think we all know what happened to Joel. The next bit of deception originates in the official story trailer for the game, where it shows multiple shots and scenes of dialogue between Joel and Ellie. And those same scenes happen in The Last of Us 2. However, Joel happens to just look a little bit different. That's because these scenes in the game are from flashbacks, because once again, if you know, you know. In the trailer, it is easily distinguishable that Joel looks different. He has longer hair, longer facial hair, and just a more general wear and tear look about him, which would also make one believe that he would be around for much longer in the story. Naughty Dog knew that what was going to happen in the first few hours of this game was going to be a shock to a vast majority of people playing, but how they went about keeping it a secret could have definitely been done differently. Ubisoft doesn't have the best reputation when it comes to building expectations in trailers and then having the actual game live up to those expectations. This is shown perfectly in Rainbow Six Siege and Watchdogs, where the graphical fidelity in-game is drastically different than what is shown in the trailers. And of course, we understand that when you are marketing a game, you want to showcase it in as good of a light as possible. But when you walk through the exact same areas in a game that is shown in the trailer and just see how much it works, you're just lying to people, especially when it is a gameplay trailer or showcase. For example, walking around the city or in different shops in Watch Dogs, it is glaringly obvious how different the lighting truly is. And while this next thing may not be huge, it is comical, the difference in the hostages in Rainbow Six from the trailer to in-game. Thankfully, the gameplay in Rainbow Six makes up for the graphical deception and is why the franchise has been so successful for so long. But it doesn't always work out like that for every game. Lie after lie after lie. With expectations through the roof, No Man's Sky had one of the worst launches in gaming history. with all sorts of promises that had been made by the creator Sean Murray. The day the game released was the day people realized that the promises had turned into lies. From large-scale joinable space battles, naming your ship, ringed planets, day-night cycles, animal interactions, and multiplayer, the list goes on and on and on. And on top of all the lies, the game was also a buggy, almost unplayable mess. And as you could imagine, people were not happy, not one bit. These weren't just deceptions or a product of bad communication. These were straight up blatant lies. The biggest one of those being one that we mentioned earlier, multiplayer. In an interview, Sean Murray was asked, clear as day, will you be able to play with your friends? The answer?
Yes, but the chances of that are incredibly rare, just because of the size of what we're building.
It was then clarified that the game is not a multiplayer game only because of the massive scale of the game, saying that the chances of two players ever crossing paths in a universe this large is pretty much impossible. Well, it took one day for two friends to get to the exact same spot in the game and figure out in real time that they, as well as so many other people, had been lied to. Now, we do have to give credit to No Man's Sky. They could have just taken the money and ran, but they decided to stick it out and fix their game, adding in so many new things that weren't initially promised and finally delivering on some of those original promises. The main one being actual multiplayer. So No Man's Sky might have one of the best redemption arcs in gaming history. Every single game on this list has had its fair share of bugs, glitches, and disappointment associated with it. But Cyberpunk 2077 might be at the very top of this list. Upon release, there were almost too many glitches to count. Anywhere at any time was an opportunity for a glitch to happen. And yes, some of the glitches were absolutely hilarious, but many of them were immersion breaking, and when you can't escape them, it just feels like you're in some kind of glitchy hell. It kind of follows the motto that it's funny as long as it's not happening to you, but when it does happen to you, it is incredibly infuriating. And of course, no company is going to want to showcase a glitchy mess, but making it seem like the game is running smoothly, knowing the kind of state that it was in, it's just not a good look. And while glitches are all people really talk about when it comes to Cyberpunk 2077, they make it kind of difficult not to. There were other lies. There were many things shown in their 48-minute gameplay reveal that just never made it to the full game. To name a few, there aren't any cutscenes that you can see your own character. There were no key life events. Every character played the exact same way after the prologue. The city streets were not bustling with crowds of people. There was no elaborate driving interface, and the list is almost never ending. It goes on and on and on. We've talked about plenty of games that lied or were deceiving about graphics, game mechanics, or even characters that were going to be in the game. But Metal Gear Solid 2 pulled a fast one on everyone by tricking players into believing that they were actually going to be playing as someone else. The E3 2000 trailer focused on Snake navigating a ship. The E3 2001 trailer featured Snake doing what you would want Snake to do: hiding, sneaking, and shooting. All that cool stuff. When it came time for players to finally play the game, they realized that they weren't going to be able to play as Snake. The game starts out by addressing your character as Snake, but then quickly changes their codename to Raiden. And many people thought they were just being messed with and that you would only play as Raiden for a bit, but nope, it was for the entire game. Ah yes, another classic tale of expectations for remaster not meeting reality, and this one is just not even close. The most obvious of the letdowns being in the cutscenes. Seeing the comparisons side by side really just makes it so obvious as to how much of a disparity there really was between what was shown at BlizzCon in 2018 and what players got in 2020. Another hot topic surrounding this game was the story, or the reworking of the story rather. Players weren't happy with how similar the reforged version of the story was to the original. There were initially some very aggressive changes made to the story, but that was met with less than stellar feedback, causing those aggressive changes to be taken back a bit. The problem with that is that the expectations for change were already set, making a large number of players excited for something that they would just never get.